Alright, here we are back with chapter 11. This is actually the last chapter of geometry that we're going to go through. And I kind of lumped a lot of the sections up together, so there's really not a ton of videos this time, but it is going to be something where there's a lot of formulas, and as long as you have the formulas in front of you, you're great. If you don't have the formulas in front of you, this is going to get kind of challenging. So just make sure that all of these formulas that I write down, you have all of the information for. If you don't have them, this is going to be tough, but if you have them, it's going to be no big deal at all. Okay? So we're going to start out with circumference. Circumference is basically talking about the entire length around this circle. So it's talking about the length around a circle. Basically, if you make a circle with a string, and then you cut that string, how long is that string? That's what it's asking for. Circumference is given by this formula, 2 equals 2 times pi times r. Now r is something called the radius, and the radius goes from the center of the circle to the side of the circle. That is the length of the radius. Okay. Now, just so that you know, because some of you might not remember this from years past, but this length right here, the one that goes all the way across, is called the diameter, and that's given by d. Okay. So up here, I'm going to write the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. So either one of those is okay. You can use either one that you want, but just keep in mind diameter is 2 times the radius, and the radius is just from the center to the outside. Arc length is given by something that looks like this. I have a point in the middle, that pretend that's the middle of the circle. Arc length is specifically saying the length of that little piece of circle right there. That's what it's saying. So the arc length is that little tiny piece of a circle. Now when we look at this, the arc length is specifically going to give us an angle in the middle. So whatever that angle is, I don't really care what that angle is, but it's going to give us an angle in the middle of the circle. Okay? And the way that we're going to deal with this is we are going to put whatever the angle is over 360, because there's 360 degrees in a circle, and that's going to equal whatever the arc length is, which we're probably not going to know. So it's going to be the arc length over, and then it's going to be the entire circumference. So that's going to be over the circumference. So that's why we just found out that circumference formula a second ago. Okay. Now we're going to take almost the exact same concept and we're going to apply it to area and sector area. Now area is specifically talking about how much stuff fits inside this circle. That's what it's saying right there. How much stuff fits inside that circle. And this formula is area equals pi times the radius squared. Now I put the radius in parentheses because you are not squaring pi ever. You are only squaring the radius. Ever. That's it. Okay, so you're only doing the radius. Now, same thing being said here. If I draw an angle, whatever this angle is, sector area is specifically talking about how much of that pi am I eating. How much of that pi is that? So when you look at this, it's still the same kind of thing. It's almost the exact same formula as arc length, but it just changes a little bit. Instead of arc length, it's going to be sector area over total area, so whatever the area of the circle is. So I'm going to go through a couple of these examples with you guys so that you can see how they work. A couple of them are more challenging, but again, what I would very strongly suggest is that while you're looking at your worksheet, try your best on it and then go to my worksheet and look at the answer key. If you can see the answer key after my stuff, that's great. If you can't see the answer key after my stuff, that's fine too, okay? Or if you can't get the answer, I should say, after you look at my stuff, that's okay too, because then you can always contact me and let me know, hey, I didn't understand what was going on here, can you walk me through this example? Okay? So, we're going to go through some of these examples. We're going to start out, the thing that it wants us to do is fill in all of the missing information. So we're going to start out with what we know. Right now I know that the radius is 4, and I know that the angle measure, because that angle measure is given to me, of the shaded region, the angle measure is 85 degrees. Now I have to use that information to help me figure out the rest of all of this. Okay? The easiest way to do any of this is to go through and figure out the area and the circumference first. Alright? So I know that the diameter is just doubled the radius, so I'm going to multiply it by 2. Circumference is 2 times pi times the radius, and the radius in this case is 4. Alright? So 2 times pi times 4. Now literally type that into your calculator. 2 times pi times 4. If you can't find the pi button, it's the second button and then the one that's the caret. So second caret, and that will give you pi. Alright? And the answer to that one is 25.13. So that's 25.13. So we're going to do the same thing with area. So now when I look at area, area is equal to pi r squared. So it's going to be pi times the radius, which is 4 squared. So pi times 4 squared. Now if you type that into your calculator, make sure you use parentheses. Pi times 4 squared is the same thing as pi times 16, because 4 squared is 16. So when we type this into our calculator, we're going to get 50.3. Okay? Now here's where things get a little bit more challenging. This is where things get a little bit trickier, and this is why I said a little bit ago, if you don't understand how to do anything with proportions or anything like that, this is where things get tough. Alright, so I know that with arc length, the formula is the degree that I'm using, 85 over 360, is equal to, and then it's going to be the arc length, which I don't know, over the circumference, which I do know, and that's going to be 25.13. Now I'm going to write over on the other side just so that I don't run out of room. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to do 85 times 25.13. So 85 times 25.13 is 2136.05. And that's going to be equal to 360x. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 360, and when I divide both sides by 360, I end up getting 5.93. I'll just call it 5.9. Okay? So that's what that one looks like. Now we're going to do the same exact concept with sector area. So with sector area, I'm still going to take my 85 over 360 equals, I don't know that, over 50.3. I'm going to cross multiply again, so I'm going to do 85 times 50.3, and that's 4275.5 equals 360x, and then I'm going to divide each side by 360. And that gives me 11.9. Okay? So that's how those problems are worked out. I'll go through one more with you, but sometimes what you're going to notice is that you're given an area, or sometimes you're given a circumference, or sometimes you're given something, and you're going to have to work backward. No matter what you do, no matter what question you're given, start out with what they give you and find the radius. If it's possible, find the radius, because if you find the radius, you can find absolutely everything else. So no matter what happens, start out by trying to find the radius. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this last one because I think it's the most tricky. Alright? So this thing right here, it gives me the sector area. That's what it's giving me. So it's giving me the sector area, and it's telling me the sector area is 12 feet. There's only one thing that I know, and that's that sector area has a little formula. Right? So what I need to know is I need to know how many degrees are in the middle of that, or are in that shaded region. There are 360 total degrees in that shape, minus 263, and when I do that, I end up getting 97. So I know it's going to be 97 over 360 equals sector area over area of the circle. Now that's the only thing I can do with sector area, because if you look at the formulas, there's absolutely nothing other than sector area that we can deal with. So this is how you have to do this problem. But now if you think about this, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be taking my sector area, I'm going to be finding my real area, and then once I find my real area, I can find my radius. That's how I'm approaching this problem. Okay? So now we're going to cross multiply 360 times 12, which is going to be 4320, equals 97x, and then I'm going to divide each side by 97, and it's going to be 44.5. So what that told me is that my area is equal to 44.5. Now, think about what area is. Area, 44.5, is equal to pi times the radius squared. Now this is why we did this whole problem, because now I can just solve for the radius. Divide by pi, so I'm going to use the pi button on my calculator. 44.5 divided by pi. Oops. So 44.5 divided by pi is 14.17 equals r squared. And now we know that to solve for r squared, we square root everything. So when I square root my answer, I'm going to get 3.8. So that gives me 3.8. And now we're in the exact same spot that we were with the last problem. So here's where I'm going to leave you on that one. I'm not going to go any further with this because I want you to try to figure out all of the rest of this stuff when you have the area. The whole reason I gave you this example was to work backwards. Start with something and work backwards to see if you can get where you need to be. Okay? Again, let me know if you have any questions because this takes a little bit of math comprehension. Okay? So now we're on the last problem. With the last problem, I have to figure out some information. It doesn't matter what or the last page, I should say. The last page, I have to figure out some information. So what I'm going to do is I always am trying to figure out the missing portion. So like in this case, I'm looking for the sector area. The sector area is always the shaded region. So the shaded region is what I'm looking at. So let's look like right here. I know that this thing has a 90-degree angle, which means that this one right here is going to be 270, right? So that thing is 270. So what it really wants me to do is it wants me to find the area first, and then it wants me to find the sector area, which is really nice because it actually gives me the radius already. So if I want to find the area is equal to pi times 17 squared. So I'm just going to type that all into my calculator. Oops. So when I do that, I end up getting 907.9. So my area is 907.9, and now I'm just going to go through the process of my sector area. So 270 over 360 equals x over 907.9. So now I've got all of my information, and now I'm hoping at this point you guys know how to cross multiply. So now you just cross multiply this whole thing and solve, and you end up getting 680.9. Now the rest of this works out very, very similarly. The three problems on the bottom are probably the most challenging ones. They're not all awful, but they're probably the most challenging ones. They're kind of like the example that we did on the last slide. So again, I'm going to leave those with you. All of the answers to everything worked out is on my answer key. Try it first. If it doesn't make sense, look at the answer key. If it doesn't make sense after looking at the answer key, then come talk to me about it. Say, hey, I don't understand how this works. Can you please work me through one of these problems? And I'd be more than happy to help you. Okay? So, we're going to pick up with section 11.3 next. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you send them my way. I'd love to hear from you to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. If you don't understand what's going on, make sure that you ask questions. Right now, it's totally on you guys to ask questions, so make sure you do that. Okay? See you next time.